Hello everyone, it's time for another live look at the astrology. My name is Katie Sweetman and this is your look at the astrology for November 10th through 16th, 2025. We had a lot of things going on last week. We had Mercury turn retrograde, which actually was yesterday. We had Uranus go back in Taurus. These are a couple of things that I really want to resurface because it helps us to put into context and into a frame of our November and even our December. So if you are watching live, as always, do say hello. It's always fun to see where everybody's watching from. I have Mars in Sagittarius. I have Mercury in Sagittarius. So, I have Sagittarius rising. So for me, I get to travel through you all. I realize we're an international audience. And for those that don't know who I am, my name is Katie Sweetman, and I'm a psychic medium and an astrologer here in the rolling hills of Central Maryland. And every week we gather live to look at the astrology. You hear me say it every week. The astrology is 50%. You are the other 50%. Don't forget about you. Astrology is just energy. It's archetypes, it's the energy of time, it's how we live time. And so when planets move, which they do quite frequently, more so than others, it shifts the energy. It shifts how we live time, sort of that sense of ambience, what's going on in the background. Are things fast? Are things slow? Is it time to rest? Is it time to take action? So astrology can help us just align ourselves to the different seasons, so to speak. When we get to Scorpio season, which you all probably know, we're in Scorpio season by now. And as a tangent, very quick tangent, my birthday is next Monday, the 17th. I'm not going to be doing this live because, you can imagine. I'm going to try to record something in advance, and no promises, so you just don't hold it against me if I don't get something up until Tuesday. But yeah, I'm born at the end of Scorpio. So anyway, it's Scorpio season. It means that regardless of whether or not you are a Scorpio, it means that this is a season for us to really take in the impermanence of life. And I mean that in the sense that I'm here in the Northern Hemisphere. Maybe I realize, again, we're an international audience and maybe the leaves haven't changed on your end of the world, but it represents the time of the season when things have come to the end of their cycle. It's an archetype. Not everything is meant to last. Everything has to go through a passage or a transition. I realize this is a show about astrology, not about tarot, but it's that's why the tarot deck has a death card, because it teaches us that there is this sense of passage and that impermanence, and we go through different cycles of life. Now, we had this really beautiful Taurus full moon last week that reminded us that even though life is impermanent, we still need to enjoy it. We need to get into the pleasure of life, connection, food, the material world, abundance. And so that stands in counter to Scorpio season because everything in balance. So, yeah, my doggy. So we're in Scorpio season, and so last week, speaking of Taurus, I spoke about Uranus going back in Taurus, and it's always kind of funny the things that pick up on social media. I wrote about Uranus going back in Taurus, and one of my posts, for me, 1,000 people is a lot. Maybe not for other people, but it was always interesting, like the comments that I was getting. It was like, oh my gosh, Uranus is back in Taurus, 2018, 2019. This means that I'm going to live my life as it was. And no, it just means that we've come to the end of this. We're revisiting the end of a story that began in 2018, 2019. It doesn't mean that it's going to be the same as it was in your life in 2018, 2019. That world does not exist. I think we can all at least agree on that the world as it was, our world as it was in 2018, 2019, does not exist anymore. That's not any planet's fault. Planets just tell us time. So Uranus going back into Taurus moves the conversation with a particular planet, Uranus. It's an evolutionary planet. It talks about awakenings and transformations and new consciousness and reinventing how we do that sign. It moves the conversation back to a sign, Taurus, which is typically about keeping things stable, grounded, reliable, practical, I love Taurus, but that Taurus archetype has not been reliable and grounded over the last 7 years. Our relationship with money, food, prices, not to kind of go off on a tangent, but this is an area where we've seen, I think collectively, there hasn't been a lot of stability and security. So whatever began for us, whatever story began to come into our lives back in 2018 and 2019, even if you're sort of scratching your head and you're like, but I don't know, Katie, I don't know what story. Whatever it is, it's there, and it's to discover it, I hope, and it's to start to bring that story to a conclusion. Because I'm pretty sure nobody listening, unless you're an infant, are going to live to see Uranus back into Taurus. It's Uranus is going to be back in Taurus until April 25th of 2026. So we've got about, 5-6 months left of Uranus in Taurus. And I'm saying this as a Scorpio, and this is something that I probably spoke about last week. I spoke about it in my newsletter, is that I'm saying this as a Scorpio who has Uranus in Scorpio as well. Nothing in my life looks the same as it did in 2018 and 2019. But I think that's just part of the vibe of that transit for Scorpio. So with planets changing signs, let's go back to Mercury in Sagittarius. So Mercury has been in Sagittarius. I can't remember when it went in, probably in October. But in Sagittarius, Mercury retrograde means that it needs to do a work. We all need to do a work. Anytime a planet turns retrograde, it means we've moved from the active state of the planet, active forward movement, to yin, receptive. Yang, active, yin, receptive. It is the duality of creation. And so when a planet turns retrograde, it takes on those qualities of needing to go back to the past, listen to our intuition, not move so fast, perhaps slow down. And there is, and I know you all know this by now, I hope, but I'm not that astrologer that sort of rings the alarm bell every time Mercury goes retrograde. It's okay. Your life is going to go on. You can do things. You can make choices. I think with an asterisk, I think we need to understand that, and maybe you think differently, that's fine. But my personal point of view is that I'll still live my life. I'll still make choices, but I like to listen to my intuition. I like to slow down. I like to double check things, because otherwise the active yang state is like do, go, go, go. There's a time and place for that, just not during a retrograde. Now, all planets turn retrograde except for the sun and the moon. So we actually have another retrograde that starts this week. We have Jupiter turning retrograde on November 11th. And so that means that there's this like a switch that's happening in the sky in the moment. Venus is now in Scorpio, Mars is now in Sagittarius, Uranus is back in Taurus, and then of course we have Jupiter turning retrograde this week. So going back to Mercury, Mercury rules the mind, how we think, how we listen, how we learn, how we communicate, how we exchange. It's also the choices that we make. As the ruler of Virgo, it's also analysis. Our ability to take in the information, there's the receptive yin side, to take in the information that we've gathered through Gemini, Mercury also rules Gemini, and begin to process it, begin to organize it, sort it, to create systems and hierarchies. So when Mercury is retrograde, our lives don't grind to a halt. Yes, you may lose your keys. Yes, you may be late. But it is to reassess, to reevaluate, does the system still work for me? Do I need to look at things from a different point of view? From a classical perspective, throw some technical astrology in for a moment. From a classical perspective, Mercury is not, it's in its what's called its detriment in Sagittarius. Because Mercury needs flow, it needs movement. When it's in Sagittarius, typically Mercury in Sagittarius can lean a little too much into Jupiter. Jupiter is the ruling planet of Sagittarius. So this is a Mercury of opinions, beliefs, faith, judgment, moralizing, but also a Mercury that can have a strong sort of sense of right and wrong. There's positives and negatives to any planet and any sign, even if it's in what's called sexaltation. So when Mercury is retrograde, which it's now retrograde at 6 degrees of Sagittarius, we need to take a second look at our beliefs, our judgments, how we see things, and to go back to that Mercury-like curiosity as the ruler of Gemini, and to see things from a different point of view, to maybe reanalyze the situation. Is there something that we missed? Because there's a hill that Sagittarius will die on, and I'm saying this as a Sagittarius rising with 3 planets in the 12th in Sagittarius, and it's when Sagittarius thinks that it's right. So this is a time where even if you're not a Sagittarius, because this is a collective transit, we need to sort of reassess that hill that we're going to die on, so to speak, because we think that we're right. So how do we slow down with Mercury retrograde? How do we slow down until about the 29th of November, which is when Mercury turns direct? How do we, again, see things from a different point of view? Mercury is going to go from Sag to Scorpio, where it'll end its retrograde on November 29th at 20 degrees of Scorpio. Sag is wisdom and knowledge. This is the way I see things. I see things because I know I have been through the experiences. I have gotten the degree. But to go back in Scorpio, it is a lot of inner searching. It's a lot of that navel gazing side of Scorpio, to maybe see, where do we have a blind spot? Where do we have a prejudice? Where is there something in our unconscious that we're not acknowledging that helps us to maybe see things from a different point of view? Mercury in Scorpio is very, it's typically, not always, it has a almost like an X-ray vision. It's able to research, get to the bottom of a mystery, and typically really see through things. So it's a very sharp, Scorpio is ruled by Mars. It's a very sharp place for Mercury to be from November 18th to the 29th of November into December. I don't think Mercury gets back into Sagittarius till about the middle of December. So we have some work to do over the next few weeks, and again, it's to embrace the yin side of a planet, the softer, the quieter, the intuitive, the slower, but also the sense of the past and the memories that we carry and the things that we need to unravel, so that we can see things again from a different point of view. We can make different choices, and that's something that we can do when Mercury goes direct at the end of November. If you feel more comfortable putting things on hold, by all means, it is absolutely 100% your choice. For me, if time and money is on the line, I typically will wait. There are other planets that I have way more caution about the retrograde when it comes to, let's say, scheduling a surgery, Mars or Venus, making big purchases. So Mercury, because Mercury turns retrograde 3 to 4 times a year for 3 to 4 weeks at a time, it's very often that Mercury is retrograde. So that's Mercury retrograde, and then we also have Jupiter retrograde this week on November 11th, and Jupiter turns retrograde at 25 degrees of Cancer. So in contrast to Mercury in the sign of its detriment, Jupiter is in Cancer, the sign of its exaltation. I know this is technical stuff. For those that are learning astrology, if you really want to get to the heart and soul of astrology, learn rulerships, because it tells you how the energy of the sky moves around. When a planet changes signs, it shifts the energy. It's almost like a chessboard. It moves the energy to a different sign depending on where that planet is. It strengthens, it can weaken, it can create conflict, it can create harmony. But going back to Jupiter turning retrograde, Jupiter spends 5 months retrograde. So this is going to take us all the way to March 10th, 2026, when Jupiter turns direct at 15 degrees of Cancer. But in the meantime, Jupiter is one of those planets, and I think I've sort of talked about this before. It has this byword in astrology. It's like, oh, it's your planet of growth. But, like, what does that mean? We need to understand that Jupiter represents an energy and an archetype that makes us want more out of life. Imagine you wanted nothing out of life. How much would your life grow? Probably not much. You eat the same thing, you do the same thing, you don't go anywhere, you don't read anything, you don't learn anything, you don't question anything, you don't want more out of your life. So your life is pretty small. Of course, it's not you. Jupiter says there has to be more out there. I want to find it. I want to discover it. I want to learn about it. I want to read about it. I want to write about it. I want to write books about it. It's higher education. It's foreign travel or long distance travel. It is a planet that, in contrast, I'm saying this from the point of view of Sagittarius, of Scorpio, it gets us to look up. The center of our galaxy is located in the part of the sky where Sagittarius is. It's the center of our galaxy. It's Sagittarius A. It's a supermassive black hole, I believe. But that part of the sky is the Milky Way. You can't see it this time of year because the sun is in the way. You typically need to see it in the spring. I say that northern hemisphere when the sun is in Gemini. But that part is the river or the ribbon of stars that go throughout the sky. So there's a sense of awe and wonder with Jupiter as the ruler of Sagittarius. Just as to sort of follow the thought through, Jupiter is the ruler of Pisces. It is to have that awe and that wonder, that desire for more, to go within, to the spiritual, the mystical, the intuitive, the emotional, for example. That's the yin side of Jupiter. That is the internal side of Jupiter as opposed to the external side of Jupiter. So Jupiter retrograde in Cancer, it doesn't negate the positive qualities of Jupiter in Cancer. It just talks about this, let's say, if we go back to just Jupiter in general, in Cancer, we want more of Cancer, home, family, connection, emotional security, softness, care. Cancer is the archetype of the mother. It's one of the 4 cardinal signs. It really talks about support, but literally in the case of the zodiac, Cancer forms the base and the foundation of the zodiac wheel. So that's one of the reasons why Cancer is such a fundamental sign of the zodiac and the moon, its ruler. It's the tides, the ebb and the flow. So while Jupiter is in Cancer, it's a reminder that Jupiter, in its exaltation, technical point, does its best work in Cancer, the sign of home and family and past and memories. We need that anchor. I realize we all live different lives, and for a lot of you, because you're my clients and I've heard the stories, family is a very difficult word. And so how do we find home? Where is home? And who is home? Jupiter is an opportunity. It doesn't mean that it's going to hand it to everybody. It's something that we still need to go after. It says this is a time where there is an opportunity to build emotional connection, to forge family-like connections, or to grow your family, if you like your family, to grow your family, to find a sense of home within, to plant roots. We want more comfort, more emotional security. I realize that's, for a lot of people, that's a luxury. So it's to hope, it's to use this energy of Jupiter in Cancer to our advantage into the end of June of 2026. And that's on the 30th of June is when Jupiter goes into Leo. So Jupiter in Cancer retrograde is, we have had an experience with Jupiter in Cancer since June 9th. Jupiter went into Cancer, and now it's time to pull back in. It's time to reassess and to integrate all of our experiences. Because wherever Jupiter is, that area of our life is typically working out. It's typically growing. It's in contrast to Saturn. As much as I love Saturn, Saturn is still Saturn. Saturn is the hard work. Things are not handed to you, but the flip side is that it is growth. It's just a very different growth than Jupiter. So we have Jupiter turning retrograde, and interestingly enough, because we have two planets in Sagittarius right now, we also have two planets in Pisces, also ruled by Jupiter. We have the North Node in Pisces right now. So a lot of things are running back to that Jupiter. So in English, it's a week to, I think, pay attention, to feel for how Jupiter is moving in your life, because from an astrological perspective, Jupiter is holding the power for Saturn, Neptune, North Node, Mars, and Mercury. It's a lot of planets that one planet is the boss of right now. And so Jupiter turning retrograde is pulling at those different areas of our lives. Even if you're like, but I'm not a Sagittarius or I'm not a Pisces, but those signs, even Cancer, those signs talk about different areas of your life. It could be a relationship sign, it could be a career sign, for example. Sometimes astrology is very literal, sometimes it's very subtle, meaning it's not to expect anything, it's just to observe, it's just to listen. Listen to your dreams, listen to your intuitions, listen to your gut. What is moving, what is rearranging this week, because we just in general have a lot of movement in the astrology. In November, we also have Saturn getting out of retrograde at the end of November. Did I say November, December? We have a lot of movement in November. And for me as an astrologer, this is a conversation I think to have in the next week or two. Mars is going to start to come to the eclipse degrees. So it means that whatever was seated at the time of the September eclipses comes to the forefront, potentially November, and maybe even in the first 2 weeks of December. That's pretty much it this week. I will add, going back to Mercury, Mercury will make in total 3 oppositions to Uranus. It also makes 3 conjunctions to Mars, and that second conjunction is this week on the 12th. And I just noticed this last week. Mars and Mercury definitely made for a, let's say, volatile combination. That is not going to be everybody's experience, but I think we need to just slow down. Like, there's a quickness to react when Mars and Mercury come together, and because Mercury is retrograde doesn't mean we can't react, but we just need to, like, have some thought before we take action or say something. So if you're about to say something in that typical Sagittarius manner, just stop, pause, like, should I say this? Because there's Mars makes things a little bit spicy this week. So that's that's it for the astrology of this week. We will go through each of the 12 zodiac signs, starting with Aries. Aries, so like little check-in Aries, because last week, and we would have talked about this in last week's update, Mars went into Sagittarius and then opposed Uranus. It's a pretty hot and spicy aspect. What came up in your life, and maybe nothing came up into your life. But I wanted to point that out because there's like seeds in that opposition that actually play out into a bigger story that will be with you for 7 years, but that's another story for another time. Mars in Sagittarius says that from now until December 15th, there's a big focus on philosophy, truth, meaning, faith. Faith, I don't necessarily mean the faith of religion, but like, what do you believe in? What do you stand for, Aries? What do you think is true? What do you think is correct? How do you orient your life? These are more like deeper philosophical questions, but let's not forget, Aries, that you are coming to the end of a great personal chapter. Saturn is in the last degrees of what's called your 12th house. So you have Saturn turning direct this month on the 27th. It's like you're preparing for a new life. And as you begin to release and prepare for a new life, I think on some level, Mars and Sagittarius for the next 5 weeks at this point is really trying to get you to look outside yourself, to look towards the world, to look towards the bigger picture. Maybe some of you or some Aries are actually traveling, foreign travel, long distance journeys, and maybe it's about higher education. Maybe it's about sharing something, speaking something, writing something, but it's to really feel into those more philosophical themes over the next 5 weeks. Mercury is retrograde. There is some process that sort of gets into like, well, how do you see things? And maybe analyzing, especially as you go later into November, beginning of December, analyzing your blind spots, your prejudices. We all have them. It's sort of the things we don't realize are there. And that's what you're really working through to uncover, because anytime a planet goes through Scorpio, it's to reveal something that has been previously hidden. Just a reminder, Uranus going back into Taurus revisits a bigger story of your life that has centered around money, income, material stability, and security, and maybe what you value or valued in 2018, 2019 is not what you value now. It's to really see how such a fundamental part of your life has changed over the last 7 years: money, income, material stability, and security. Jupiter retrograde in Cancer, you do have a beautiful gift of Jupiter in Cancer for, well, at least until the end of June of 2026. It is a beautiful place for Jupiter to be. It says this is a time where there are opportunities to grow home, family, to put down roots, to make emotional connections, to really feel that you are getting your needs met, to create a family. I realize it's going to be very specific for each person, but it is to open up to this energy because it comes only once a year. Jupiter turning retrograde, maybe this week, is showing you something about home and family and putting down roots and getting your needs met. And that's a story that will continue over the coming months, but maybe between now and, say, March, there is a need to go within and to integrate so that you can make some different decisions, or different events that can happen around the home and the family from March into the end of June of next year. Taurus, so you now have a familiar visitor back in your sign. This is something that we have been talking, like I did my first Facebook Live back in June of 2019. And at that point, Uranus was fresh into Taurus. We were at the beginning of a story. Now we're at the end of a story. It's a very different you. It's a very different time. I can go through a list of Taurus risings in my head where they have made big changes. They look different. Life is different. Maybe it hasn't been so dramatic. One of the closest people in my life is a Taurus, and her life doesn't necessarily look dramatically different than it did before, but perhaps a lot of that has been happening on the inside. So Uranus is an evolutionary planet, and Uranus has been saying to Taurus since 2018, 2019, a lot of things need to change. And in fact, a lot of things have changed. What still is there to do? What sort of last push? Because Uranus will not come back to Taurus until 80 years from now, so you're not going to be alive. So Uranus will be in Taurus until April 25th of 2026. And Uranus is always about whatever's inside of you needs to live outside of you. You can't keep it within. And sometimes we get stuck. We get stuck in ourselves. We get stuck in a rut. And Uranus has been trying to get you to get out of your own way for the last 7 years. So how do you, Taurus, get out of your own way and make that a priority as you go into the new year? Your planet Venus, it's in Scorpio as of last week, so the energy of your sign has moved over towards relationships and connections and other people. And for the next 3 weeks, that's one of the priorities of your life at the moment. It's to connect, it's to meet new people, it's to reconnect with existing relationships, and it's typically a very social sign. When we get to that Venus-Uranus opposition in a couple of weeks, it could make for some spicy astrology as we get towards the end of November, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Jupiter is turning retrograde tomorrow. For you, this is a time to really want more out of life in terms of education and learning and new perspectives and opening your mind. Jupiter is not the planet where we have to do a lot of hard work. That's Saturn. But that doesn't mean that Jupiter is handing things to you. This is a beautiful time to take classes, to read, to nourish and grow how you see things, to start a novel or start a manuscript, to travel, to move, to explore. So there's a lot of movement, and to see what new ideas and new perspectives are trying to come into your life this week as Jupiter turns retrograde. Gemini, so Mercury is your planet, and as of yesterday, November 9th, Mercury is now retrograde until November 29th. It goes from 6 degrees of Sagittarius to 20 degrees of Scorpio. This is, at this point, that Mercury turns retrograde 3 to 4 times a year, every few months for 3 to 4 weeks at a time. It is just your periodic reminder that life is not always forward movement. It's the ebb and the flow. It's a period for you because that's the thing about being a Gemini or even being a Gemini rising. You typically take in all the information, but it's like, have you sorted through it? Have you taken the time? I can't, to give you an example, I can't remember how many times I have looked at notes that I have taken a class or a seminar, and I'm like, this is great stuff. I completely forgot about this. So Mercury retrograde, that's symbolically going back to something where I'm like, oh, like I want to sit with this information because it's really good. I just sort of took the notes at the time, but I didn't integrate it. So this is a period on some level that gives you the time to integrate. Mercury has just turned retrograde in your 7th sign of relationships, connection, socialization, partnership. So part of this retrograde is about you and other people. Part of this retrograde is also about how you connect, relate, and socialize with other people, because Mars is also in this space, and Mars is a little feisty, a little spicy, and maybe something is coming up between you and another person, or even you and a partner, for example. Mercury will make in fact, this week it will make a conjunction to Mars, so just sort of see what is coming up Wednesday into Thursday, especially with the moon in Virgo, because sometimes there can be a leap to conclusions or leap to judgments or saying something fast or choosing something fast. And just remember that Mercury retrograde is always a time to slow down and to listen more to your intuition or listen more to your heart instead of just, always being in the mind, for example. Uranus going back into Taurus for you, just to resurface something last week. This is a reminder that the last 7 years have really shifted your internal spiritual landscape. There's been a time to really open up, and we've talked about this before, but you had Uranus and Gemini in your the start of your sign from July 7th all the way just until last Friday. So you're in the beginnings of a big change, Gemini, and maybe Mercury retrograde, Uranus back in Taurus, is to assess. It is to sort of take look back at the last few months and be like, okay, what sort of new things were coming into my life? Because Uranus is going to go back into Gemini on April 25th of 2026. We also have Jupiter turning retrograde this week. Jupiter is one of your major planets, Mercury and Jupiter. Jupiter is a career sign. Yes, Mercury is a career planet, and also it is a relationship planet. So it's again highlighting those themes around relationships that I've already mentioned. Jupiter is turning retrograde in your 2nd sign of money, income, material stability, and security. Typically, when Jupiter is in a space in our personal astrology, that space can breathe, it can grow. We want more out of life. In the case of the 2nd, we want more stuff, we want more investments, we want more resources. I think on some level, especially with the Mercury retrograde, it's just to reconsider what you're spending money on, what you're valuing. Even if things are really easy, it's not to necessarily, maybe be a little bit more strategic in how you invest and spend things. Jupiter retrograde doesn't mean that, it affects your money for the next 5 months. It just means that you need to reassess where you've been spending, what you've been investing in, and maybe wanting more out of life. Maybe you don't need what you think you need, and maybe it's to open up to needing other things in your life. So Cancer. So the moon is your planet, and this week the moon is going from, I gotta remember, I'm like totally drawing a blank. Where's the moon right now? The moon is in, bear with me. The moon is in Leo right now. It just went into Leo. So the moon is in your second sign of money, income, material stability, and security. And so for the next couple of days, that is sort of where you are. You need to take care of practical matters. You need to look at spending and resources as you go into the middle of the week. Later on Wednesday into Thursday and Friday, the moon is in Virgo. It means that we have come 2 full rotations since the solar eclipse on September 21st. It's to continue to feel into what these new beginnings were marked in September. For you, Virgo is your sign of education, information, writing, speaking, communicating, but also choices. Virgo is always the sign that's really pushing us to be better, to do better, to be more precise, to be more perfect. Although I think it's an energy of refinement as opposed to perfection, because nothing is truly perfect. So how do you continue to refine how you speak, how you listen, how you learn, how you invest in your education, how you move, how you travel, for example? By the end of the week, Mercury goes into Libra as your sign of home and family, roots, and foundation, and that's more of a weekend to spend at home as you close the week. So Uranus is now back in Taurus, and for you, that's not like necessarily a big shift, but this is just to remind you that over the last 7 years, a lot of the bigger awakenings and openings have either been in the realm of friends or community, society, humanity, social issues, and social causes. And you're beginning to wrap up a chapter that was trying to, on some level, make your world bigger. We also have Jupiter turning retrograde in Cancer. I know you're a Cancer or Cancer rising. You have a visitor in your sign for a year. So from beginning of June of 2025 to June of 2026, Jupiter is in Cancer. It says that you have started a personal journey. Jupiter takes 12 years to go through our solar system, 12 years to go through the zodiac. So you are at the beginning of some sort of journey. Jupiter, as I was saying in the introduction, makes us want more out of life. It's trying to inspire you, motivate you, get you to go towards different shores, to look towards the world, to grow your life, and sometimes literally to make your life bigger. I realize this is not going to be relevant for everybody, but it's very common for Jupiter to be in your sign or your rising sign when there's a pregnancy. So like I said, it's not relevant for everybody. This week we also do, Mars continues to be in Sagittarius. Sagittarius for you, your sign of work and projects. And I think with Mercury turning retrograde there, it doesn't mean that your life grinds to a halt, but on some level it's a need to really reevaluate how you're organizing your life, where you're putting your time, your projects you're doing, maybe clean things out so you can sort of reorganize the system that run your life, or even to refocus and reprioritize health and wellness in your life. Leo. So the sun is your planet. In this season, so Scorpio season, the sun is going through something called your 4th sign, home, family, roots, foundation. It is a period for you to go within, to spend time with loved ones, or even to crave that sense of emotional stability and security that this part of our astrology is supposed to help us build. I realize that's a complicated, it's not always so easy for everybody, but that's the general period you are right now. So it's more about your inner world, your inner life, your family, past memories. Then we also have Mercury retrograde. The retrograde is happening between something called your fifth sign. It's about the self and creativity and identity and how you express yourself, and also again about home and family. But for more specifically, where the retrograde begins, it's bringing up questions about the self. How do you express yourself? How do you be yourself? Because not for everybody, it's not always so easy to be ourselves, even for a Leo. And with Mars in that same space, maybe it's even getting into questions about, creativity and passion and joy and fun. And if you're feeling a little burnt out, Leo or Leo rising, maybe this is a time with Mars in Sagittarius, and even with the retrograde, to come back to the things that light you up and give you joy and give you passion. We also have Uranus back in Taurus. This is for the next 5 months. It is a review. It's a last go of a major transit in your life. So for 7 years, 2018, 2019, all the way to 2025, 2026, you have Uranus in your sign of career. And at this point, I've had many conversations with people, clients, or even feedback from you all, and I realized that for Leo, it's not all about career per se, but this has been a time, and it's always specific to the person. It's specific to your own astrology. That's why it's always good to talk to an astrologer like me. It is a time where it's to reinvent or transform your relationship with duty, responsibility, the public, your public life, and also for some people it really is about career. So see what is shifting, what is awakening. We're gonna have a pretty powerful Scorpio new moon next week, and that Scorpio new moon will be opposite Uranus. So this question about career and your public life and where you're taking your life towards, that's going to come into the forefront the end of November and into the first few weeks of December. Jupiter turning retrograde. Jupiter is turning retrograde in something called your ninth sign. Am I doing the astrology right? Doing the astrology right. It's turning retrograde in your ninth sign. No, I'm sorry, I'm doing Scorpio. Jupiter is turning retrograde in your 12th. I thought I was thinking I have Scorpio on the brain. Jupiter is turning retrograde in your 12th. And so this is a very quiet, hidden place for Jupiter to be, but it's also a place that Jupiter loves to be. It's a time for Leo to really open up their spirituality, their intuition, to really reach for something beyond themselves, to really seek peace, connection, unity. I realize these are big topics, but that's the high side of the 12th. And this is also a time to reach towards something outside of yourself, because the 12th takes us outside of the ego. It takes us outside the 12th. Maybe this is a period for you to listen to your dreams, to open up to your intuition, and maybe to receive messages this week. Virgo. So Mercury is your planet, and Mercury has just turned retrograde. So you know this by now. Mercury turns retrograde a few times a year, 3 to 4 times a year, for 3 to 4 weeks at a time. And as I was saying to your fellow cohort, Gemini, is that life can't always go forward. It needs time to reflect, to integrate, and I think I use the same example for Gemini that I'll use for you. It's like I was looking through some notes, and these were notes that I took during some classes and seminars. I was like, wait a second, it's like good stuff. But I just took the notes. I just gathered the information. I didn't integrate it. So use Mercury retrograde to integrate, particularly to integrate the experiences, the choices, and the decisions that were made over the last 3 months. Because I think Mercury was retrograde in August, if I recall correctly. Mercury is retrograde in your 4th sign, home, family, roots, foundation. It will leave November 18th, but in the meantime, it's beginning its retrograde here. So what is coming up in your home environment? What is coming up in your living situation, a family member, the past, memories? It doesn't mean that your life has to be on hold until November 29th when Mercury turns direct, but something needs to play out. So I'm typically not the person to say, no, like, live your life during Mercury retrograde. But I think on some level, especially when Mercury goes back into Scorpio for you, it's possible that you don't have all of the information. Mercury going back into Scorpio November 18th into December is to uncover and to reveal something that maybe that you haven't seen or you haven't considered that will help you to make a different decision. For example, if you're looking to buy a home or looking to move, Mercury is turning retrograde, and maybe it's like, you know what? Maybe I don't have all the information. Maybe I need to chill out for a few weeks and see things to play through, and then maybe reassess things in December, for example. You also have Uranus back in Taurus. For you, Virgo, Taurus is what's called your ninth sign. It's wisdom, it's knowledge, it's how you see the world. So you got 5 more months of this time that's been really trying to open up how you see things. And I'm saying this with a lot of love, and I'm saying this because I was raised by a Virgo. Virgos can sometimes get really tunneled. They really focus on no, this is the only way it can be. And I love Virgos. Virgos get things done. But Uranus has been trying to tell you for the last 7 years that maybe there's different ways to do things or different ways to see things. Then we have Jupiter turning retrograde in Cancer. This is Mercury and Jupiter, 2 of your main planets. And Jupiter turns retrograde in, I gotta do the math, Virgo, Cancer, your 11th sign. And so for you, this is a time that, over and into next June, because that's the length that Jupiter will be in Cancer, it is to expand your community. It's to make a new social connection. It's to find your people. It's to open up the world. It's to go beyond yourself. Jupiter always helps us to want more out of life, more connection, more to look towards the future. So just lean into whatever Jupiter is opening up for you this week, is sort of whispering to you and maybe helping you to see different possible futures, or maybe it's to connect with new people or make new friends. And that's one of the bigger focuses for the next 6 months. Libra. So Venus is your planet, and Venus, as you know since last week, it's in Scorpio. It will pretty much spend November in Scorpio, and this is a time where the energy of your sign is pointed towards money, income, material stability, and security. So from a very practical standpoint, maybe you're just really looking at your checking account, your statements. Maybe you're thinking about how you should spend your money. I realize that things are kind of crazy right now. Maybe you're just strategizing for the rest of the year. Maybe it's not money. Maybe it's you're gathering resources. That comes in a lot of ways. Maybe you're just looking at what you own. Maybe it's more about value and worth, and maybe even self-worth and value. Uranus has gone back into your 8th. We spoke about this last week. This is a little bit different for each Libras because Uranus has been doing its work of evolution and transformation in a space that is very private. It's like the inner psychic landscape, your psyche, the deepest parts of who you are. And there's been this push, whether you realize it or not, over the last 7 years to open up this part of yourself, part of your life. A lot of deep inner work for Libra and Libra risings over the last 7 years. There is something that's beginning to come to an end, some sort of chapter and story that began in 2018, 2019 that's beginning to come to an end because Uranus has 5 more months in your 8th. I wanted to point that out because over the next few weeks, Venus, as it goes through Scorpio, is going to oppose that Uranus, and then you're going to also have a Scorpio new moon next week on the 20th, and it's going to sort of add to the energies of Venus opposite Uranus. So it's saying as you go into December, what needs to awaken, what needs to release, what needs to transform, because Uranus will not go back into Taurus in your lifetime. We do have a Mercury retrograde. For you, that's not like a Mercury is not a big ruler in your astrology, but it is talking about a need to listen to your intuition, to listen to your dreams. For you, Gemini is something called your ninth sign, to open up your eyes, to see the world, to travel, but travel doesn't have to be physical travel. It can be inner travel, spiritual travel, and maybe seeing things and even seeing your beliefs from a different point of view. We do Jupiter turning retrograde this week. It's turning retrograde in Cancer. Now, all Libra risings, you have the benefit up until the end of June of next year of having Jupiter in your 10th sign of career. That's not to promise anything, but typically where Jupiter is, things are working out. We typically want more of things wherever Jupiter is. So this is a time to want more out of your career, want more out of your professional life, want more out of, your worldly life. So this is where Jupiter is really trying to expand and grow. It gives you opportunities. Doesn't mean you take them, but use this time. I realize we're starting to get into a weird time of year, but use this time to grow your professional life, to perhaps get a new job, to network, especially if things are a little bit not so good in your professional life. You use Jupiter, reach out to people, network, connect, and maybe this is how Jupiter will begin to help you to grow your professional life right now. Scorpio. So happy birthday, Scorpio. You got, as of last week, Mars, your planet, it's in Sagittarius. And so Mars is going to be in Sagittarius for the rest of Scorpio season. So it pulls your energy towards a sign that's a fire sign. It's about new ideas, new information, travel, exploration, faith, truth, wisdom, and knowledge. But my periodic joke about Sagittarius is, how does Sagittarius get wisdom and knowledge? It gets it from Scorpio, because that's where we really truly learn about life, is through Scorpio. Sagittarius is also something called your second sign, money, income, material stability, and security. So for the next 5 weeks, that's where a lot of the focus of your chart is. That's where you are at this moment, whether it is to make more money or to focus on resources and assets, to look at purchasing property, or maybe it's just to really get clear about what you value and what you need, and even your own self-worth and value. Mars made a very spicy opposition to Uranus last week. Did you notice anything? If not, that's fine. But there's this new sense of awakening, new sense of personal shifts that's beginning to come in. Mercury has turned retrograde. It has turned retrograde in your second sign of money and income. So it's probably not the best time to make big purchases, because Mercury is saying on some level to Scorpio, you don't have the story, you don't have the full information, you don't know the true value of something, and maybe wait until December before you make that bigger decision. But it's up to you. Jupiter is turning retrograde this week. It's turning retrograde in your ninth sign. So wherever Jupiter is, we want more out of life. The ninth is about seeing the world, opening up our eyes, going beyond ourselves, faith, truth, wisdom, philosophy, foreign travel, new discoveries. And so Jupiter is pushing you to go out in the world, and that's going to mean different things to different people. For one Scorpio, it's a lot of travel. For another Scorpio, it's a lot of education. For another Scorpio, it's more philosophical in how you see your life and how you live your life, and sort of the ideas that you're open to. So feel into Jupiter turning retrograde this week. Listen for the stories that are beginning to come into your life, because Jupiter has been in Cancer since June, so last 5 months. What else is going on? So Uranus is back in Taurus, and we talked more about this last week, but this was a big deal transit for Scorpio from 2018, 2019 to now. And Uranus will not leave Taurus. So it's the last 5 months until April 25th of 2026. This has been a huge time. I mean, I know 7 years is a huge amount of time, but it's been a huge change in general for Scorpios and Scorpio risings. You've needed to reinvent a key area of your life. Maybe that is relationships. Maybe you're not in the relationship you were in 2018, 2019. Maybe you have brought new people in your life. But overall, it has been to reinvent how you connect, relate, and socialize with people. And I've just noticed in general, I'm not just saying this as a Scorpio, but I think Scorpio typically has a lot of has like the big wall around them, the moat and the guard tower and the retina scan. And I think Uranus has been trying to get Scorpio to open up so new people or new situations can come in. So we're at the end of the story, so we're wrapping the story up. It's just to begin to feel into how this part of your life has shifted in the last 7 years and what more can shift. Sagittarius, Jupiter is your planet. And as you probably know, Jupiter has been in the sign of Cancer since June of 2025. So just 5 months ago, Jupiter spends about a year in each of the 12 zodiac signs. So it takes 12 years to go through the zodiac, 12 years to go through your own astrology. Wherever Jupiter is, because it rules you, it takes your energy and it focuses towards that domain of life. And what is Cancer for you? It is your eighth. It is a time to go deep into the psyche, to get into themes about trust, intimacy, power, control, vulnerability. For some, it's really around financial matters. It's about the assets that you have available to you, your financial planning, estates, benefits, and maybe it's just more for in general about that real inner work with Jupiter in Cancer. You last had Jupiter in Cancer 2013, 2014. So a very different time in your life. Now Jupiter turning retrograde, it's not, doesn't mean that, oh no, I'm in retrograde. No, it means that you've stepped into a 5-month period of time where it's more yin than yang. It's more receptive than active. It's a time to go deeper into yourself, to take all the discoveries that you have made within your psyche of the last 5 months and to integrate them. That's the thing. If we don't integrate our discoveries, they just pass by us. So as much as this time is to illuminate the deepest recesses of your psyche, it's also to integrate the discoveries and the choices and the changes that you know you need to make. We also have Uranus back in Taurus for you. That's, as we talked about last week, this is a part of your chart that talks about health and wellness, or how you take care of your body, or even your day-to-day life and routines. And it's possible that nothing looks the same as it did in 2018 and 2019. Uranus has 5 more months in this part of your astrology, so it is to wrap up one last push, one last change, one last illumination, because as Uranus goes back into Gemini on April 25th of 2026, it takes you into a new major chapter in your life where a lot of the evolution and transformation is going to happen through relationship. Mercury also turned retrograde yesterday. Mercury is a major planet in your astrology. It is a career planet for you. It is a relationship planet for you. And it turned retrograde in Sagittarius. Now, hey, you're a Sag. So there is something that's about leadership and power and action and drive and getting what you want. It doesn't mean that you can't get what you want with Mercury retrograde, but there's some process that's happening where you need to sort of take a different look at how you engage and interact with people, or maybe the responsibilities and duties that you carry, and maybe make a personal change. Because when Mercury goes back into Scorpio starting on the 18th, Mercury goes into a very quiet spiritual place, but also a space where something has to change, it has to come to its end. So it just talks about especially Sagittarius, we talked about this last week, you just got a lot of stuff going on in your astrology, especially when Uranus gets back into Gemini. You have Saturn and Neptune down in your 4th house. A lot of things have been shifting over the past couple of years for Sagittarius, and I think on some level with Mercury going back into Scorpio, it is to make that last release because there are new things that want to start coming into your life, and it's a natural process to either feel an emotion or grieve, or to really sit with what is moving and shifting and transitioning, because Mercury doesn't get back to Sag until December, and you also have Mars in your sign, so it's sort of this weird duality of, like, on one hand, Mars is like, let's go, let's go, let's do. Mars is in Sagittarius until the middle of December, but then Mercury is going back into the 12th. Maybe I need to sort of wrap up some loose ends. Maybe I can't go full speed, towards what I want. Maybe there's something else that needs my attention. You'd have to see for your own life. Yeah, there you go. Capricorn, so Saturn is your planet, and Saturn, as you know, is in its last few months. I think it's like 3 months at this point, last few months in Pisces. Later this month, Saturn will turn direct on November 27th. That's actually kind of a major point, because it's to really see what is it about Saturn's time in Pisces that's really starting to come to a conclusion, or even like come into reality. And we've talked about this, and I think it's like honestly a much bigger conversation considering the time that we have. The past few years for Capricorn, and I think it's been lived differently for each Capricorn or Capricorn rising, has been this need to go deep within, to let go, because on some level Pisces is about the release and it's about endings in order to prepare for something new when Saturn goes back into Aries, and this will happen on February 13th. And you start this chapter of your life that will be very much focused for 2.5 years on home, family, roots, and foundation. But for right now, your priority is how you think, how you listen, how you learn, how you communicate, and the choices that you make. And maybe with the retrograde, even with Mercury retrograde, it is to communicate differently. It is to think differently. It is to weigh your options differently. It is to make choices differently. Because some of the choices that you are making right now are really setting up the next couple of years. Uranus has gone back into Taurus. For you, Taurus is something called your 5th sign. It is coming to the conclusion, because we've got 5 more months of Uranus and Taurus, of this bigger personal change that has played out to varying degrees, depending on who you are, over the last 7 years. Are you the same person that you were in 2018, 2019? You're like, yes, no, probably not. Meaning, Uranus has been trying to get you to break free of yourself, to grow yourself, to open up yourself, and to discover who you truly are, which means to release anything that is not really you. We also have Mercury turning retrograde. Mercury turns retrograde in Sagittarius. Sagittarius is something called your 12th sign. This is a time when, especially with Saturn's in your 3rd, to really listen to your intuition. Capricorn can sometimes get really into work mode, build mode, do, go. And I think on some levels, Mercury in the 12th is trying to get you to slow down, to really see things from a higher vantage point, to reconsider different perspectives. Mercury will go back into the 11th of friends, community, society, humanity, social issues, social causes. But in the meantime, Mercury is in a very quiet, spiritual, and sacred place. Use this time to get out of your own way and begin to open up to your higher self, your higher wisdom, and your higher intelligence. Jupiter is turning retrograde in Cancer. Cancer is a relationship sign. You're just in a general time in your life from June of 2025 to June of 2026, where the area that you want more out of is relationship. Maybe it's a new relationship. Maybe new people are coming into your life. Maybe it's the start of a serious relationship, like a marriage or a partnership. Maybe it's more about socializing and connecting, but it's to see what is the shift point around relationships this week as Jupiter turns retrograde. Aquarius. So Saturn is your planet, and it's got a few more months left in Pisces, which means you have something that you are wrapping up that began in March of 2023, because March of 2023 is when your planet, Saturn, went into Pisces for the first time in 30 years. So I know I've said this a million times at this point, but the past 2 years, the priority of your life has been material. Either it is to make investments, to buy property, to buy a home, whether it is to make more money, not have as much money, but on some level, it is to really prioritize and to learn about the material side of life, even if it means that you made a budget for the first time in your life. But maybe it's not money, maybe it's also value and worth, and it's really represented a larger shift of value and worth over the past couple of years, because you also have Saturn conjunct Neptune, and this will take you into next year, but Saturn is typically a very concrete planet. It rules you, but with Neptune, maybe things feel very liminal, or maybe you're opening up to things and seeing things differently and valuing things differently that you valued things differently, 2 years before. Then there's Uranus going back into Taurus, and this was actually part of a bigger shift in your life that started in 2018-19 all the way to 2025-2026 that centered on home, family, roots, and foundation. Maybe your home environment looks nothing like it did 7 years ago. Maybe you've moved. Maybe people have moved in. Maybe people have moved out. Maybe it's not the physicality of home and family, meaning your address. Maybe it's to really feel that you have a place that you can call home and you can really put down roots. Uranus is at its core evolutionary in nature, but this part of the chart, we hold past and memories and ancestors. So really the past few years has also been to free you from the past, the things that have held you back, so that you can open up and to create new roots and foundation. Jupiter is turning retrograde. It's turning retrograde in something called your sixth sign of health and wellness. Jupiter in general is an area, wherever Jupiter is, we want more out of life. And maybe you've made some positive and healthy changes over the last 5 months. You have Jupiter in this part of your chart for the next 7 months. Yep, that's right. And so this is an area of your life to really put to positive benefits. So if you need to make positive changes in your health and wellness, it includes getting sunshine and fresh air and going for walks. You have Jupiter being supportive of this. Maybe it's a time to really clear things out. I'm thinking of my father, who's an Aquarius, and he's just been like cleaning out the garage, cleaning out the basement. And as a Scorpio, I'm like, great. But maybe that's one of the ways in which you're also using Jupiter's energy to create more space in your life. Last but not least, Pisces. So Jupiter is your planet, and this week Jupiter turns retrograde. So that's not like, oh no, my planet turns retrograde. No, it's just a reminder that life is the ebb and flow, and Jupiter every year will spend 5 months out of the year retrograde. So it's just part of the natural duality of life. Now, since I think it was June the 9th, Jupiter went into Cancer. So it moved the energy of your sign towards your fifth, your sign of self-expression, joy, creativity, passion, fun, children, art. And maybe you're like, but I'm not having fun, Katie. But this is a time where Jupiter is trying to inspire you and motivate you and help you to get more out of life. For example, if you're burned out, Jupiter in Cancer is like, we need to put more time in the things that light us up and give us joy and give us passion. If you need more creativity, here's Jupiter. I said this last week, it's just been a really heavy time in Pisces astrology. The past 2 years, and in particular the last year, because you had Saturn in Pisces, you had eclipses in Pisces, and I think on some level Jupiter is helping you out, because Jupiter is saying, in spite of all the duties and responsibilities and the things that have been put upon me, like the weight on my shoulders, I can't forget about the things that actually nourish me and light me up and give me joy and give me passion, because Jupiter is very strong in Cancer. It's what's called in its exaltation. So it is to feel that nourishment, to receive that nourishment, even as Saturn is in its last 3 months in Pisces. just continues to be that last wrap up of a period of your life that has marked major chapters, new beginnings, needing to stand on your own 2 feet, needing to take on responsibilities. And again, it's been heavy. Saturn typically is heavy, but Jupiter is saying balance it out with the things that actually light you up and give you joy. Uranus has gone back into Taurus. This is not to the same dramatic effect for some of the other signs. It's just to take you back to a story that over the last 7 years, you've needed to reinvent how you think, how you listen, how you communicate, the role of education in your life, opening up to new ideas, movement, and even travel. And for the next 5 months, it is to integrate, resurface, and make that last light bulb go off, because Uranus is not going to move into this part of your astrology for another 80 years. You're not going to be alive. Uranus will go back into Gemini on April 25th of 2026, and that is a part of a bigger shift in your life that we have talked about, we will continue to talk about. Finally, Mercury is retrograde. Mercury has turned retrograde in your career sign. And in general, it might mean that there's just something that's playing out in your professional life, in your office, or something around duties and responsibilities that needs into December to fully play out. Not always. Mercury is always a call to see things from a different perspective, to weigh our options, to integrate what we've learned and what we know. Mercury is going to be making a conjunction to Mars this week. Mars is going through your career sign all throughout November and into the first 2 weeks of December. The area of your life that's really heating up at the moment, that is your, let's say, short-term priority, is your professional life. So maybe it's about, especially with the Mars-Saturn square, to take more responsibility. I know you're thinking, not more responsibility, but maybe this is a time as you go into the middle of December, you need to take more responsibility. You need to really go after your professional ambitions or your professional desires, or it's to really, to be Mars in your public life, somebody that takes action, somebody who takes the lead. Mercury in that conjunction is a little bit spicy this week. Maybe you're saying something, maybe it's just to be careful that you're not saying something so quickly that you don't think it through. Mercury is a relationship planet, so maybe with some of this question about leadership or even responsibilities, it's also connected to something in a relationship. So Mercury will be retrograde until November 29th. So this sort of talks about relationships for you and your professional life, and on some level to see things from a different perspective. So I went long this week. So thank you all. Like I said, we had a lot of stuff last week. Just wanted to resurface some things and talk about all the big changes that are happening. So yeah, so as I said in the introduction, next Monday is my birthday. So I'm not going to do a live because, I've got to enjoy life. And we'll see about how we do next week's videos. So in the meantime, have a great week. You can always book a consultation with me. I am on my website, empoweringastrology.com. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Spotify. I'm on YouTube. You can sign up for my newsletter. And I will see you all in 2 weeks. Take care. Bye-bye.